After the middle-aged man in silver robes finished speaking, he looked at Nangong Chun again, the sneer on his face deepening. Nangong Chun, your companion wants to bet his life against mine. Do you dare to join? Why wouldn't I dare? Nangong Chun glanced indifferently at the middle-aged man in silver robes and said calmly, As you wish, add my life to the bet as well. He had unconditional trust in Duan Lingtian. Half a year ago, if Duan Lingtian hadn't lent a helping hand, he and his twin brother Nangong, he would have already been dead. It could be said that their lives were saved by Duan Lingtian, not to mention his confidence in Duan Lingtian. Even if he lacked it, he wouldn't undermine Duan Lingtian. Good, very good. Hearing Nangong Chen's words, the middle-aged man in silver robes laughed, his smile brilliant. In that case, let the three of us swear an oath together. The middle-aged man in silver robes stuck out his tongue and licked his dry lips, a look of longing on his face, as if he were desperate to see the scene of Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chun being struck dead by the lightning punishment. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the three of them swore the oath together. Boom, 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 boom. 27 consecutive claps of thunder followed, tearing through the sky and piercing the eardrums of everyone present, responding to the oaths of Duan Lingtian, Nangong Chun, and the middle-aged man in silver robes. Since you want to bet your lives, this time, only the four of you will enter the gravity ladder to participate in the second round of selection. Zhong'an, third disciple, spoke slowly. After finishing, he looked at Song Ting, second disciple beside him, and asked with a smile, Second senior brother, you shouldn't have any objections, right? No objections, Song Ting, second disciple, responded indifferently. Nangong Chun, you and this overconfident fellow will be struck dead by the lightning punishment immediately. The middle-aged man in silver robes glanced at Nangong Chun and sneered. Just as he finished speaking, he looked at Duan Lingtian again and mocked. Kid, you will soon realize the life bet you initiated yourself will cost you your own life. I'll wait and see. Facing the mockery of the middle-aged man in silver robes, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged as he responded calmly. Let's go. Then, he called out to the Nangong brothers and walked ahead to the base of the gravity ladder. Above their heads was the seven-colored gravity ladder. The part closest to them was the red section of the gravity ladder, which was also the part with the weakest gravity. Whoosh! When Duan Lingtian's group of three arrived at the base of the gravity ladder, the middle-aged man in silver robes arrived as well. The mocking smile never left his face. You go first. Just then, Duan Lingtian looked at Nangong Yi and said via Yuan power sound condensation, Ignore everything else. Take out your spiritual artifact and rush upward with your strongest power and fastest speed. Like Nangong Chun, Nangong Yi also had unconditional trust in Duan Lingtian. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's Yuan power sound condensation, he set off immediately without a second word. Boom! From Nangong Yi's body, the power of Yuan power and profound truth exploded. Immediately after, he took out his spiritual artifact, stepped into the air, rushed into the gravity ladder, and struggled upward with all his might. Overestimating yourself, the middle-aged man in silver robes sneered and unhurriedly stepped into the air while looking at Duan Lingtian. Kid, don't say I'm bullying the weak. You go up first. As he finished, his face was full of mockery. Duan Lingtian didn't bother being polite with him either. He stepped into the air and followed Nangong Yi. When Duan Lingtian entered the gravity ladder, the middle-aged man in silver robes and Nangong Chun then stepped into the air, entering the gravity ladder almost at the same time and pushing their way upward. Swish! As the first person to enter the gravity ladder, being at the Martial Emperor Realm's 6th level, Nangong Yi successfully reached the blue section of the gravity ladder with the help of the spiritual artifact in his hand. Beyond the blue section was the final purple section. Further up would count as passing the gravity ladder in the second round of selection. However, Nangong Yi was currently stuck in the blue section, unable to enter the purple section. The gravity there was simply too strong. There's no way. At this moment, Nangong Yi's heart was filled with helplessness, and he hated himself for being too weak. If Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chun were struck dead by the lightning punishment from the 9-9 Thunder Tribulation just because he failed to pass the gravity ladder, he would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. Thinking of this, Nangong Yi suddenly became anxious and rushed upward desperately, intending to enter the purple section and even passed through it to clear the gravity ladder. I must pass the gravity ladder. I must pass the gravity ladder. Boom. As the power within Nangong exploded, and he rushed upward with the spiritual artifact in his hand. He was surprised to find that unlike the powerful gravity he encountered when touching the purple section of the gravity ladder before, this time, besides successfully entering the purple section, he also felt that the gravity within it was pitifully small. It was even less than the gravity in the red section of the gravity ladder. Swish. In a state of confusion and bewilderment, Nangong broke through the final hurdle of the gravity ladder in one go and successfully passed it. He became the first person to pass the gravity ladder today. Whoosh. After Nangong rushed out of the gravity ladder, the crowd of onlookers fell silent. Gulp, gulp. On the vast stone platform, a group of people participating in the selection for martial god disciples and followers swallowed hard. The scene before them shocked them. For martial artists above the Martial Emperor Realm 4th level and below the Martial Emperor Realm 7th level, Nangong was not a stranger. They had been in the same cultivation place for the past 6 months. Isn't he a Martial Emperor Realm 6th level martial artist? Passing the gravity ladder seemed like child's play for him. They found this unbelievable. Meanwhile, another group of people participating in the selection for martial god disciples and followers, those at the Martial Emperor Realm 7th level, had already recognized that Nangong was not a martial artist at or above the Martial Emperor Realm 7th level. Hearing the whispers of the former group, they learned of Nangong Chen's specific cultivation level and felt strange and surprised by it. The gravity ladder is constructed from a gravity ladder formation. Could something have gone wrong with the gravity ladder formation? Hard to say. Logically speaking, let alone a mere Martial Emperor Realm 6th level martial artist. Even a Martial Emperor Realm 7th level martial artist couldn't possibly pass the gravity ladder so quickly. This matter is strange. It is indeed strange. Many people felt that something was not right. Nangong passing the gravity ladder so easily was completely beyond their expectations. What's going on? Now, even Zhong Un, 3rd disciple, and Song Ting, 2nd disciple, these two Martial Emperor's direct disciples, couldn't help but glance at each other, both seeing astonishment in the other's eyes. They had seen the strength Nangong displayed just now very clearly. With that little strength, let alone passing the gravity ladder, even entering the purple section of the gravity ladder should have been impossible. For a moment, they also wondered if something had gone wrong with the gravity ladder formation. Impossible. At the same time, the middle-aged man in silver robes inside the gravity ladder also noticed that Nangong had successfully passed the gravity ladder in the second round of selection. His face immediately showed disbelief and horror. Nothing is impossible. The next moment, a calm voice reached his ears, sounding like a clap of thunder. When he came to his senses, he realized that not only the youth in purple robes who had entered the gravity ladder before him, but even Nangong Chun was now rushing upward at an absurdly fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he found that the two people he wished he could kill immediately had successfully passed the gravity ladder after Nangong. Suddenly, in the vast gravity ladder, he was the only one left. No, the face of the middle-aged man in silver robes changed drastically. He didn't even have time to think about anything else. He immediately realized the impending crisis and hurriedly took out his spiritual artifact, wanting to pass the gravity ladder as quickly as possible. He still had a chance now. Although those three had passed the gravity ladder, as long as he passed as well, he wouldn't be the one to die. Of course, conversely, if he couldn't pass the gravity ladder, he would be the one to die. Passing the gravity ladder is a piece of cake for me. Even at this moment, the middle-aged man in silver robes was still full of confidence. Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chun passed the gravity ladder together. The whole process was as smooth as flowing water, seemingly unhindered by the gravity within the gravity ladder. Following Nangong, the two of them passed the gravity ladder just as easily, leaving a deep impression. Could the gravity ladder really have some problem? Song Ting, 2nd disciple, and Zhong'an, 3rd disciple, looked at each other again, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. Soon, they realized that the gravity ladder seemed to really have a problem. Boom, 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 boom. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the 7 colored powers inside the gravity ladder surged and finally seemed to converge, all falling upon the middle-aged man in silver robes within it. No, immediately after, the crowd only heard a shrill and unwilling scream in their ears. The next moment, in full view of everyone. The middle-aged man in silver robes was enveloped by the converged seven-colored powers, and the power on his spiritual artifact, and his body was completely annihilated. Boom! Another loud bang came as the middle-aged man in silver robes was forcefully blasted out of the gravity ladder. He's finished. Seeing the middle-aged man in silver robes blasted out of the gravity ladder, many people thought to themselves. Almost at the same time, the sky turned dark as clouds gathered from all directions, and clear, deafening claps of thunder rang out. No, no! Hearing the thunder, the middle-aged man in silver robes looked as if he had seen a ghost. He moved, wanting to flee. But could he escape? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, as the lightning punishment of the 9-9 thunder tribulation fell, the middle-aged man in silver robes was blasted into dust, and even the profundity fragments were no exception. Only a storage ring remained, falling alone. The middle-aged man in silver robes died just like that, completely. A life bet. It was an oath made under the 9-9 thunder tribulation, the oath tribulation. No one could violate it. Once violated, no matter where they were, they would be struck dead by the lightning punishment. Duan Lingtian, what exactly happened just now? Originally, Nangong Yi's heart was still full of confusion about his own baffling passage through the gravity ladder. Then, Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chun passing the gravity ladder like lightning made him even more confused. Although he knew the two of them were capable of passing the gravity ladder, their speed could never have been so exaggerated. Now, the middle-aged man in silver robes failing to pass the gravity ladder and being struck dead by the lightning punishment made him even more perplexed. Whoosh! Just as Nangong Yi questioned Duan Lingtian had already reached the place where the silver-robed middle-aged man had been blasted to death by lightning punishment and smoothly picked up the storage ring he left behind. The entire motion was as fluid as water. Isn't it obvious? The three of us passed the gravity ladder, but he failed, so the lightning punishment obliterated him. Only after returning to the Nangong brothers did Duan Lingtian finally answer Nangong Yi. Yet Nangong Yi could tell Duan Lingtian was brushing him off. He became more convinced that the earlier events were tied to Duan Lingtian, including his own smooth passage through the gravity ladder and the sudden anomaly that flung the stronger silver-robed man out. Still, seeing Duan Lingtian had no intention of explaining, he asked no more, though countless doubts remained. Whoosh, whoosh. While the onlookers were still stunned, Song Ting and Zhong'an, the two personal disciples of the Martial Emperor, arrived beneath the gravity ladder. By now the ladder's 7 colors representing the 7 neutral levels had returned to normal. Swoosh, swoosh. Song Ting and Zhong'an exchanged glances, moved together, and vanished before the crowd. The next moment, everyone saw them inside the ladder, passing it in an instant. Throughout, the fleeting power they revealed never stirred the might of heaven and earth, let alone summon a heaven-earth phenomenon. Whoosh, whoosh. When they reappeared, they stood before Duan Lingtian. What did you just do? Song Ting fixed Duan Lingtian with a cold stare and asked in a heavy voice. Yet Duan Lingtian ignored the interrogative tone, remaining calm and unruffled, as if Mount Tai could collapse before him without a change of expression. You're quite good. If our master were here, I'm sure he would like you. Unlike Song Ting, Zhong'an was rather friendly toward Duan Lingtian, sizing him up with obvious interest. The master he spoke of was naturally Martial Emperor Lingxian, Lord of Lingxian Peak. Neither Zhong'an nor Song Ting had sensed anything unusual while passing the gravity ladder. Thus, only one possibility remained. Everything just now had been orchestrated by the youth in purple robes before them. Though they couldn't fathom how, it was the only explanation. He may like me, but I may not like him. Hearing Zhong'an, Duan Lingtian replied indifferently. For a moment, the smile on Zhong'an's face turned forced. Insolence. Just as Song Ting's face darkened, a stern shout rang out at the perfect moment. Immediately, a figure arrived behind Song Ting, glaring at Duan Lingtian and shouting, "Boy, to profane the Martial Emperor is a capital offense." The newcomer was none other than Lu Zhong. Originally, seeing Duan Lingtian win the bet had left Lu Zhong unhappy, but he could only bide his time to kill him. He had assumed he would have to wait until the 3rd round of selection. Never had he imagined Duan Lingtian would dare insult the Martial Emperor of Lingxian Peak with his words. At once he realized this was an opportunity, a chance to strike with righteousness on his side. What? So eager to kill me. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes, meeting Lu Zhong's gaze as he asked calmly. I don't know what you mean. I only know you've profaned the Martial Emperor, so you deserve death. Senior Brother Song, Senior Brother Zhong, please allow me to slay this boy as a warning to others. Lu Zhong stared darkly at Duan Lingtian, then turned respectfully to Song Ting and Zhong and to petition them. This time Zhong and said nothing. Though he found Duan Lingtian pleasing, the youth's words had thoroughly enraged him. A dragon has a reverse scale. Touch it and you die. And his master was precisely that reverse scale. Therefore, he silently approved Lu Zhong's request. Go ahead. As for Song Ting, his eyes flashed with lethal light, as if choosing whom to devour. Yes. Hearing Song Ting, Lu Zhong's eyes brightened, his heart surging with excitement. At last the opportunity had come. At last he could avenge his younger brother. Boy, for killing my brother, today I'll take your life. Lu Zhong sent the message via Yuan power sound condensation while staring at Duan Lingtian. Yet while his secret voice said one thing, his mouth declared another. Boy, for profaning the Martial Emperor of our Lingxian Peak, forget becoming a Martial Emperor disciple. From this day forth, you will vanish from this world. I, Lu Zhong, shall kill you today to uphold the majesty of our Martial Emperor. Lu Zhong delivered these high-sounding words as he strode through the air toward Duan Lingtian, each step faster than the last, every stride causing the air to quake with continuous sonic booms. I suppose you want revenge for that bandit brother of yours. Facing the fierce oncoming Lu Zhong, Duan Lingtian mocked. Think what you want. In any case, you're doomed to die here today. Lu Zhong paid no mind to Duan Lingtian's words. His Yuan power suddenly surged, several profound truths rising around him like shadows, framing him as nothing less than a god of war ready to strike at any moment. At the same time, including Song Ting and Zhong En, both Martial Emperor's direct disciples, every gaze on the scene settled on Duan Lingtian and Lu Zhong. Even the Nangong brothers were no exception. Having received Duan Lingtian's Yuan power sound condensation, they had stepped aside from afar, eyes fixed unblinkingly on the two men. Senior Brother Lu Zhong isn't only Senior Brother Song Ting's right-hand man. He's also ranked among the top 3 in strength among all of our Martial Emperor disciples on Lingxian Peak. This youth in purple is in for some bad luck. That was the unanimous thought echoing through the minds of the Martial Emperor disciples and followers of Lingxian Peak. None of them believed Duan Lingtian could defeat Lu Zhong. Yet the group taking part in the selection for Martial Emperor disciple and follower positions all stared at Duan Lingtian with anticipation, hoping he could win one for them. After all, to a certain extent, they weren't yet considered people of Lingxian Peak. Even the two Martial Emperor's direct disciples, Song Ting and Zhong En, though finding Duan Lingtian peculiar, still didn't think he possessed the strength to overcome Lu Zhong. They knew Lu Zhong's power. Among all Martial Emperor disciples on Lingxian Peak, he could place in the top 3. Kid, if there's a next life, remember well, not just anyone is someone you can afford to provoke. Lu Zhong's voice rang out again, laced with savagery. This time he produced a spiritual artifact. His figure flashed and vanished from the sight of most, his speed terrifying to behold. The moment he disappeared, the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head also shot out, its target none other than where Duan Lingtian stood. 5 ancient azure dragon phantoms and 7,000 ancient horn dragon phantoms all bared fangs and claws as they pounced on Duan Lingtian. This was Lu Zhong's strength. To the onlookers, including the Nangong brothers, Lu Zhong's speed was absurdly fast, nigh impossible to track. Yet in Duan Lingtian's eyes it was pitifully slow. He casually lifted a hand and effortlessly caught the spiritual artifact in Lu Zhong's grip. Clap! Catching Lu Zhong's spiritual artifact barehanded, the crisp sound left the entire place deathly silent. Many faces showed disbelief. They couldn't accept what they were seeing. Impossible. Lu Zhong, the man in question, was first to react, staring in shock at the youth in purple robes right in front of him, shaking his head numbly. Nothing's impossible, Duan Lingtian answered calmly. As he spoke, the 5-colored force that had only just appeared around him suddenly surged, turning into a gigantic 5-colored beast that opened its maw and bit down on Lu Zhong. In an instant, Lu Zhong was swallowed whole, not even bones left behind, following in the footsteps of his younger brother Lu. After Lu Zhong was completely obliterated, Only a few profundity fragments and a single storage ring remained, all of which Duan Lingtian casually collected. At the same time, the five-colored force around him was reined back in, as though it had never appeared. From the instant that force emerged to the instant it vanished, no heaven and earth phenomenon had time to manifest. Evidence of how quickly Duan Lingtian had acted, faster even than the reaction of the power of heaven and earth. Silence. The scene was utterly still. All that could be heard were heavy breaths and sharp intakes of cold air. The sight left the Nangong brothers dumbstruck. Though they'd sensed Duan Lingtian's growth over the past half-year must have been immense, they'd never imagined it would be this immense. Lu Zhong, a martial emperor disciple of Ling Xian Peak who'd used a spiritual artifact and could wield the power of 5 ancient azure dragons plus 7,000 ancient horned dragons, had been killed by Duan Lingtian in a single exchange. From start to finish, Duan Lingtian had not only refrained from using a spiritual artifact, he'd barely moved. Relying merely on the blazing, beast-like force erupting from his body, he had obliterated Lu Zhong. Too strong. His strength is probably on par with the martial emperor's direct disciples. He killed senior brother Lu Zhong as easily as stepping on an ant. At this moment, Duan Lingtian became the undisputed center of attention, all because the strength he'd just displayed was simply too dreadful, striking fear into every heart. Just who are you? What purpose do you have in coming to our Ling Xian Peak? Right then Song Ting also came back to his senses, cold eyes fixed on Duan Lingtian as he demanded sharply. At the same time his robes billowed, Yuan power and profound truths rising around him like a multicolored flame shooting sky-high, enveloping his entire being. As Song Ting sharply questioned, everyone's gaze fell upon Duan Lingtian. Apart from the Nangong brothers, everyone else looked curious. Yes, indeed, this purple-clad young man, possessing strength no less than that of a martial emperor's direct disciple, yet coming to participate in the selection of martial emperor disciples and followers of Spirit Xian Peak, was truly strange. One must know that on the Cloud Continent, there were many martial emperor and demon emperor powerhouses stronger than Spirit Xian Martial Emperor. Spirit Xian Martial Emperor's strength, among all the martial emperor and demon emperor powerhouses openly known on the Cloud Continent, was at most mid-tier. In their opinion, a peak martial emperor powerhouse like Duan Lingtian, who possessed such strength from the very beginning, should have chosen a stronger martial emperor or demon emperor to become their direct disciple. What purpose could I have? Facing Song Ting's question, Duan Lingtian merely glanced at him indifferently, shrugging somewhat lazily, and said, "You're overthinking it, aren't you? It seems if I don't act, you won't speak." Song Ting's face darkened, and his tone became even colder. "What? You still want to lay a hand on me?" Duan Lingtian smiled, a brilliant smile, and as he continued smiling, his eyes unconsciously narrowed. "Do you think that just because you can kill one of us from Spirit Xian Peak, you're invincible? You should know that Lu Zhong, whom you killed, was just an ordinary martial emperor disciple of our Spirit Xian Peak." Song Ting's tone was firm. "I admit your strength is good, but if you think I'm as useless as Lu Zhong, then I have to say you're quite foolish." Lu Zhong, no matter what, was someone by his side. As the saying goes, even when beating a dog, one must consider its owner. For this purple-clad young man to kill Lu Zhong in front of him was equivalent to slapping him in the face, filling him with shame and anger. At this moment, he seemed to perceive mocking gazes coming from all directions. Now, Zhongen, who stood by, was also startled. He never expected that the purple-clad young man in front of him would dare to kill Lu Zhong so decisively. Song Ting's most vicious dog. One had to admit, at this moment, he felt a secret satisfaction in his heart. Zhongen, this person's identity is mysterious. His participation in the martial emperor disciple and follower selection at our Spirit Xian Peak might have a hidden agenda. Let's join forces to subdue him and force him to reveal his purpose concerning our Spirit Xian Peak. If he refuses to speak, we will kill him to eliminate future trouble. At this moment, Song Ting's yuanli condensed voice entered Zhongen's ears. Zhongen frowned slightly. To be honest, he was not keen on fighting alongside Song Ting. However, the identity of the purple-clad young man in front of them was indeed mysterious and needed to be guarded against. Although he and Song Ting were at odds on matters of great importance concerning the safety of Spirit Xian Peak, they still stood on a united front. Therefore, he flew out and stood beside Song Ting. The two of them confronted Duan Ling Tian together. Is senior brother Zhong and going to join forces with senior brother Song Ting? This scene shocked many people. This Duan Ling Tian, actually, not far away, Xiao Zhong stood there, dumbfounded, unable to recover for a long time. When Duan Ling Tian easily killed Lu Zhong, he was already intimidated by Duan Ling Tian's strength. Although he had long realized that Duan Ling Tian was strong, he never expected it to be so exaggerated. And now, seeing Zhong Un, the third direct disciple of the Martial Emperor in his own faction, standing against Duan Ling Tian with Song Ting, his heart couldn't help but stir with excitement. This Duan Ling Tian actually caused two direct disciples, who were usually at loggerheads, to join forces against an outsider. He's probably going to be unlucky. Whether it's senior brother Song Ting or senior brother Zhong Un, they are both direct disciples of the Martial Emperor of our spirit Xian Peak. This purple-clad young man's strength is at most comparable to a Martial Emperor's direct disciple. One-on-one is fine, but one against two, he can't possibly win. How do you know his strength is at most comparable to a Martial Emperor's direct disciple? It's well known that Martial Emperor direct disciples are existences at the peak of the Martial Emperor realm. Those stronger than Martial Emperor direct disciples are only Martial Emperor powerhouses. Do you think he could be a Martial Emperor powerhouse? The group of Martial Emperor disciples and followers watching whispered among themselves, none of them believing that Duan Ling Tian could gain the upper hand against the two direct disciples. Your Excellency's strength is admirable. My name is Zhong Un, the third direct disciple under Spirit Xian, Martial Emperor of Spirit Xian Peak. I'm very curious, with your strength, why would you come to our Spirit Xian Peak to participate in the selection of Martial Emperor disciples and followers? Zhong Un looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked with a solemn expression, as far as I know, at this time, all the Martial Emperor and Demon Emperor powerhouses in the interior of Cloud Continent should be holding selections for Martial Emperor disciples and followers in their respective cultivation grounds. Why ask him so many questions? He doesn't look like a good person at all. Before Duan Ling Tian could reply, Song Ting spoke coldly, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. He disappeared from his spot with a whoosh and reappeared in front of Duan Ling Tian. Boom! A loud bang came, accompanied by a vast wave of air that swept out in all directions. As the airwave stirred up bursts of thunderous air explosions, it also transformed into gusts of strong wind, causing everyone present, except Zhong Un, to instinctively narrow their eyes. Although they didn't clearly see what had just happened, they realized that Duan Ling Tian and Song Ting had engaged in combat. Song Ting. Zhong Un's face darkened, not expecting Song Ting to be so impatient. Of course, he also knew Song Ting's plan, which was undoubtedly to eliminate the opponent before they could speak, to satisfy his personal grudge. Whoosh! Although he guessed Song Ting's intention, Zhong Un couldn't stand idly by, because he saw that Song Ting, in his recent exchange with the opponent, seemed not to be the opponent's match. Of course, while he was preparing to act, he did not intend to cooperate with Song Ting to kill the opponent. At most, he would cooperate in subduing the opponent, making them reveal their purpose concerning Spirit Xian Peak. If the purpose was simple, then Spirit Xian Peak might gain a fourth direct disciple of the Martial Emperor. Thinking that the other party might become his fourth junior brother, Zhong Un's emotions surged, and even his movements were somewhat gentle when he struck. But he quickly realized that the other party's strength would not allow him to be gentle. Boom, 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 boom. Accompanied by a series of deafening roars, Duan Ling Tian had already engaged in battle by himself with Song Ting and Zhong Un, the two direct disciples of the Martial Emperor. Both Song Ting and Zhong Un had now taken out their spirit weapons. In contrast, Duan Ling Tian, as always, fought empty-handed against Song Ting and Zhong Un, yet he showed no signs of being at a disadvantage. In fact, he subtly held the upper hand. Whoosh! Buzz! Song Ting and Zhong Un, one using a sword and the other a saber, after a prolonged and unsuccessful battle, finally decided to exert their full strength out of shame and anger. As direct disciples of Spirit Xian Peak, when they attacked, saber light and sword shadows roared, coordinating seamlessly, directly targeting Duan Ling Tian with fierce momentum. Saber light and sword shadows crisscrossed and raged, and wherever they passed, the onlookers scattered. The group of people standing on the vast stone platform below now all rose into the air and moved to the side. When the saber light and sword shadows fell, the vast stone platform was cut into countless pieces, like tofu, with no single piece remaining intact. The stone platform, now riddled with countless cracks, was further swept by the two men's power and quickly began to disintegrate, turning into a pile of rubble, with no complete piece visible anymore. Not only that, as the two men attacked, some of the shattered stones from the vast, ruined stone platform flew into the air, completely pulled by their powerful forces. As the two men made their move, the power of heaven and earth fluctuated, finally converging into a vast celestial phenomenon. Above their heads in the void, 7 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, signifying that their current attacks contained power comparable to that of 7 ancient horned dragons. Oh my god, his strength is also this strong. Just as many people were shocked by the full power displayed by Song Ting and Zhong'an, someone couldn't help but exclaim, causing everyone's attention to shifted to the other side. There, a purple-clad young man was standing. The purple-clad young man stood there, his purple robes fluttering in the wind, his long black hair flying, and his hairband had long since been shattered by the powerful force. From the purple-clad young man's body, 5 colored flames shot into the sky, emitting bursts of awe-inspiring aura. And now, above his head in the void, 7 ancient horned dragon phantoms also appeared. This indicated that his strength was no less than that of Song Ting and Zhong'an. No wonder Zhong'an and I couldn't take him down just now. It turns out he was already using power comparable to 7 ancient horned dragons from the start. Song Ting saw this scene, and instead of being surprised, he laughed. However, now that Zhong'an and I are exerting our full strength, either of us is no weaker than him. As he thought of this, Song Ting's eyes gleamed with killing intent. Who exactly is he? He can unleash power comparable to 7 ancient horned dragons without using a spirit weapon. And just then, many of the onlookers exclaimed in shock. Their exclamations reached Song Ting's ears, causing his heart to tremble and his face to change drastically. Only then did he realize, indeed, the opponent was now displaying such immense power without using a spirit weapon. Third senior brother, we must eliminate him before he takes out his spirit weapon. Otherwise, we will be the ones who die today. Immediately, Song Ting hurriedly conveyed to Zhong'an, who was fighting alongside him not far away, using Yuanli condensed sound. Hearing Song Ting's Yuanli condensed sound, Zhong'an jolted and fully came to his senses. Just now, he was also stunned by the power Duan Ling Tian displayed without using a spirit weapon. At that moment, he knew that the opponent's strength was far superior to both his and Song Ting's. Now, hearing Song Ting's reminder, his face became extremely solemn, and he dared not be negligent. Once the opponent took out a spirit weapon, he and Song Ting would surely suffer a crushing defeat. At that time, not only Song Ting, but he too, would be meat on the opponent's chopping block. For a moment, both Zhong'an and Song Ting seemed to accelerate their speed by a few points, charging directly towards Duan Ling Tian with fierce momentum. Facing the two martial emperors' direct disciple charging like lightning, Duan Ling Tian's face remained calm. It wasn't until the two were close at hand, with overwhelming blade lights and sword shadows striking from inches away, that he finally made a move. To be precise, it wasn't that he moved, but the surging 5 colored flames on his body that moved. Boom! The 5 colored flames shook, causing the air to ripple and suddenly let out a deafening sonic boom, making many present change their expressions drastically. Just as Song Ting and Zhong'an's attacks were about to land on Duan Lingtian, at the critical moment, the vibrating 5 colored flames around his body suddenly took the shape of a sword. In an instant, Duan Lingtian seemed to transform into a giant 5 colored sword, cleaving down at the two attackers as if splitting heaven and earth. Boom, 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 boom. Wherever the giant sword passed, the air vibrated, letting out a series of deafening roars that shook the world. The rolling airwaves seemed to turn into a violent storm, sweeping in all directions. Show mercy! Before most people could react, an urgent shout came from afar, startling many as they looked up to see who it was. And just then, boom, everyone saw another person appear beside Song Ting and Zhong'an in front of Duan Lingtian. Before they could see clearly who it was, an even more terrifying explosion rang out. The explosion spread, sounding like the heavens were collapsing and the earth was rending. A rolling shockwave centered on the explosion swept out in all directions, blowing away the surrounding crowd. The group of Martial Emperor disciple was fine, only being pushed back a dozen steps. On the other hand, the Martial Emperor followers and those who came to Ling Xian Peak for the selection were all blown far away. Those with lower cultivation turned pale and spat out blood, clearly injured significantly by the shock. What powerful strength! Two forces colliding, creating a shockwave. Such power has already exceeded the scope of the Martial Emperor realm. Many Martial Emperor disciple were shocked and stared forward. It was then they realized both Song Ting and Zhong had been blown far away, their faces as white as paper and their mouths stained with blood. And at the source of the explosion, the very center of the shockwave, stood two people. Besides the youth in purple robes, another person had appeared, a middle-aged man in plain clothes. He stood there as if he had merged with heaven and earth. He was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man, the kind who would disappear in a crowd. However, his expression was currently unpleasant and slightly pale. Finally, unable to hold it in any longer, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Stumbling back 2 steps, he looked at the youth in purple robes with wariness. You are a Martial Emperor expert? The youth in purple robes was, naturally, Duan Lingtian. Just now, he had been prepared to kill Song Ting and Zhong, the 2 Martial Emperor's direct disciple of Ling Xian Peak, with one sword strike. Unexpectedly, at the critical moment, the middle-aged man appeared and saved them in time. First-level Martial Emperor realm. Are you Martial Emperor Ling Xian? Duan Lingtian looked at the middle-aged man calmly and asked indifferently. He had clearly seen through the other's cultivation. If the middle-aged man before him really was Martial Emperor Ling Xian, he would be quite disappointed, as he was completely different from what he had imagined. First-level Martial Emperor realm. Martial Emperor Ling Xian. As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, he naturally drew everyone's attention. He is the martial god? The group of Martial Emperor disciple and followers looked at the middle-aged man with surprise and a hint of doubt in their eyes. They could hardly believe it, that the martial god of their Ling Xian Peak would be at a disadvantage against someone participating in the selection for disciples and followers was simply too inconceivable. He is Martial Emperor Ling Xian. The group who came to Ling Xian Peak for the selection, including the Nangong brothers, were now staring wide-eyed at the middle-aged man in front of Duan Lingtian. That's impossible, right? If he is Martial Emperor Ling Xian, wouldn't that mean this youth in purple robes can even defeat Martial Emperor Ling Xian? Yeah, this middle-aged man was clearly at a disadvantage before him. As far as I know, only when Martial Emperor expert clash does it trigger a shockwave. Perhaps they really are both Martial Emperor expert. If this youth in purple robes is a Martial Emperor expert, why would he come to participate in Ling Xian Peak selection? Maybe he's here to cause trouble. Who knows? The crowd discussed fervently, their faces filled with confusion and doubt. A Martial Emperor expert. The Nangong brothers glanced at Duan Lingtian and then at each other, both seeing an inexplicable shock in the other's eyes. He couldn't really be the martial god, could he? The Martial Emperor disciple and followers of Ling Xian Peak looked bitter. If this middle-aged man really was Martial Emperor Ling Xian, then Ling Xian Peak would truly lose face today. Although they were disciples and followers of Ling Xian Peak, none of them had ever seen Martial Emperor Ling Xian in person, so they couldn't be sure if the middle-aged man was him. However, judging by his performance just now, he was clearly at a disadvantage against the youth in purple robes. If he really were Martial Emperor Ling Xian, once today's events spread, he would surely become a laughingstock. At that time, outsiders would say, Martial Emperor Ling Xian of Ling Xian Peak was no match for someone participating in his own peak selection. How ironic would that be? Whether he is the martial god, I'm afraid only senior brother Song Ting and senior brother Zhong know. As a Martial Emperor disciple spoke, the eyes of the group turned towards Song Ting and Zhong, looking at them expectantly. By now, the 2 heavily injured men had finally caught their breath after taking healing medicinal pill. Their faces were filled with lingering fear, and when they looked up at the youth in purple robes again, their hearts were shaken. A Martial Emperor expert. He's actually a Martial Emperor expert. They never expected that the youth in purple robes who came to their selection was actually a Martial Emperor expert. A Martial Emperor expert coming to participate in their selection? They couldn't for the life of them figure out why he would do such a thing. Soon, Their gaze shifted from the youth in purple robes to the middle-aged man confronting him, and they bowed respectfully. Eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother. Hearing Song Ting and Zhong An's address for the middle-aged man, the tense nerves of the Ling Xian Peak disciples and followers finally relaxed, and they breathed a sigh of relief. So it's the martial god's eldest personal disciple, senior brother Zhou Di. This is my first time seeing senior brother Zhou Di on our Ling Xian Peak. Senior brother Zhou Di is a figure as elusive as the martial god. I just didn't expect him to be a martial emperor expert. According to the youth in purple robes, senior brother Zhou Di is at the first-level martial emperor realm, but I wonder what the background of this youth in purple robes is. Even senior brother Zhou Di, who is at the first-level martial emperor realm, was at a disadvantage against him. The Ling Xian Peak disciples and followers discussed, their eyes all falling on Duan Lingtian in the distance, making him the center of attention, including the Nangong brothers. After a brief glance at Zhou Di, they all looked at Duan Lingtian. So it wasn't martial emperor Ling Xian. However, with Zhou Di's strength, he is undoubtedly the #1 person on Ling Xian Peak below the martial emperor. Yet he was still at a disadvantage. He couldn't really be here for the selection, could he? If he really is, then the position of the #1 person below the martial emperor on Ling Xian Peak is likely to change hands. Many whispered, and some of the smarter ones turned their gazes to the Nangong brothers. The Nangong brothers were known to some of them. Nangong Chun, you seem to know him? Nangong Yi, I remember when I first saw you. You seemed to be with him. Did you already know he was a martial emperor expert? Many asked the Nangong brothers curiously. The Nangong brothers looked at each other, speechless and inexplicably shocked. Did Duan Lingtian hide his strength back then? He couldn't possibly have gained strength comparable to a martial emperor expert in just half a year. Could he? In their hearts, there was nothing but shock. Both Duan Lingtian and Zhou Di had withdrawn their power after the shockwave swept out, so no celestial phenomena appeared. Thus, those present could only judge their strength as being comparable to a martial emperor expert, based on their conversation and the shockwave. He's a martial emperor expert. Standing in the distance, Qiao Zhong finally recovered from his shock, cold sweat dripping from his forehead. He never imagined that the youth in purple robes he had personally received half a year ago would be a martial emperor expert. Recalling his indifference toward him, a chill rose in Qiao Zhong's heart, feeling as if he had been so close to death. You too come here. At this moment, Zhou Di spoke indifferently, clearly calling over Song Ting and Zhong'an. Upon hearing this, the two didn't dare to delay and hurried to Zhou Di's side, bowing their heads and greeting him respectfully again. Eldest senior brother. In front of Zhou Di, the two were as docile as cats. You two apologize, Zhou Yi said to the two while looking at Duan Lingtian. Apologize. Song Ting and the other were stunned to hear this. Immediately afterward, the two of them realized that their eldest senior brother wanted them to apologize to the youth in purple robes before them. Eldest senior brother, Although Song Ting, second disciple, was shocked by the strength Duan Lingtian had just displayed, he found it somewhat impossible to apologize to him. Naturally, it was mostly due to his unwillingness. However, as soon as he spoke, he was interrupted by Zhou Di, who said indifferently, "He is Master's guest." Zhou Di emphasized the word guest particularly heavily. Master's guest? Hearing Zhou Di's words, Song Ting, second disciple, was stunned once again. Your Excellency, we did not know you were Master's guest earlier and have offended you. We hope for your forgiveness. At this moment, Zhong'an, third disciple, had already bowed in apology to Duan Lingtian. Even though the other party looked frighteningly young, the strength he had just displayed made him qualified to receive a bow and apology. Moreover, who knew if the other party was a demon emperor expert? Song Ting, second disciple, took a deep breath and followed suit with an apology. Now, no matter how much unwillingness he felt in his heart, he did not dare to act recklessly anymore. What a joke. The eldest senior brother, Zhou Di, had already said the other party was Master's guest. If he continued to act recklessly, it would be the same as showing no respect for Master. Because of this, he wouldn't dare to act out even if he were given 10 times the courage. However, Duan Lingtian ignored the apologies from Zhong'an, third disciple, and Song Ting, second disciple. His gaze fell on Zhou Di as he asked with some confusion, "Does Martial Emperor Ling Xian know me?" By now, Duan Lingtian also knew that the middle-aged man before him was not Martial Emperor Ling Xian, but rather his first personal disciple. The guest must be joking. If Master didn't know you, why would he send me to invite you for a chat? Zhou Di said to Duan Lingtian. Guest, please follow me. After saying that, he set off and left. Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow, his heart full of curiosity and doubt, and followed closely behind. After Duan Lingtian left with Zhou Di, although many people remained above the now-ruined vast platform, the atmosphere was one of dead silence, frighteningly quiet. After a long while, they finally snapped back to their senses, their faces and eyes filled with shock. Guest, that youth in purple robes is the Lord Martial God's guest? The crowd was greatly astonished. Song Ting, you seemed a bit abnormal today, as if you couldn't wait to kill that man. Could it be you have some deep-seated hatred for him? You almost got me killed today. Zhong'en, third disciple, looked at Song Ting, second disciple, and complained via Yuan power sound condensation. Don't tell me it was just because of Lu Zhong's death. Hearing Zhong'en, third disciple's Yuan power sound condensation, the somewhat wooden Song Ting, second disciple, finally reacted, and a bitter smile unknowingly appeared at the corner of his mouth. His desire to kill that man had indeed started because of Lu Zhong's death. To be precise, it was because of the death of the two Lu Zhong brothers. One must look at the master before beating the dog. Someone had killed his subordinates multiple times, and he felt his dignity was being provoked, which was why he wanted to strike like lightning to finish the man off. But who could have imagined that the other party not only possessed strength comparable to a martial emperor expert and surpassed his eldest senior brother, but was also his master's guest? If he had known this earlier, how could he have made things difficult for the other party, let alone gotten himself deeper and deeper into trouble? I hope Master won't blame me for this. At this moment, Song Ting, second disciple, finally felt afraid. Martial Emperor Lingxuan's guest? How come I never heard Duan Lingtian mention this? The Nangong brothers looked at each other, their eyes full of daze and confusion. However, thinking of the strength Duan Lingtian had just displayed, their hearts were once again filled with shock. The second round of selection continues. Finally, Zhong'en, third disciple, caught his breath and announced. The people present also recovered from their shock one by one, and their attention shifted back to the ongoing second round of selection. On the other side, I don't think I know that Martial Emperor Lingxian, do I? Duan Lingtian followed Zhou Di, his brow slightly furrowed, and his heart filled with doubt. Finally, under Zhou Di's lead, Duan Lingtian met Martial Emperor Lingxian on a mist-shrouded stone platform on one side of the summit of Lingxian Peak. Behind the mist was a small stone platform. On the stone platform stood a house with a small courtyard, looking very simple. In the courtyard, a stone table stood quietly with a stone stool on either side. Master, the guest has arrived. After bringing Duan Lingtian, Zhou Di bowed to the person sitting at the stone table, his tone full of respect. The person sitting at the stone table was a young man. When he turned his head to look at Duan Lingtian, his face was fully revealed, causing Duan Lingtian to be momentarily stunned. It's you. Looking at this familiar yet strange face, Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised because it was not the first time he had seen this person. I originally said you had hopes of comprehending sword profundity, but now it seems I was mistaken. You had already comprehended sword profundity long ago. The young man, who was Martial Emperor Lingxian, sighed as he looked at Duan Lingtian. When Duan Lingtian followed Zhou Di over just now, his body was permeated with sword profundity. As a sword cultivator, Martial Emperor Lingxian could easily see it. I was the same. I was mistaken too. So you are Martial Emperor Lingxian? Duan Lingtian shook his head with a smile. The Martial Emperor Lingxian before him was none other than the person he had met that day at the summit of Lingxian Peak. Yang Hui. He still remembered that when he first met Yang Hui was using mental energy to control a sword. At that time, he thought Yang Hui was an inscription master, so he didn't use his mental energy to probe his cultivation. Now it seemed Yang Hui wasn't necessarily an inscription master. A martial god can naturally project their mental energy externally. Forget about controlling a sword with mental energy. Even using mental energy to attack or defend against enemies is no problem. Thanks to your guidance that day, I finally managed to successfully raise my sword profundity by a level today, and coincidentally, my cultivation also made a breakthrough to the next level after my sword profundity improved. Martial Emperor Lingxian Yang Hui looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze full of kindness, completely lacking the airs of a martial god. Sit. Following that, Yang Hui invited Duan Lingtian to sit at the stone table. Zhou Di, who was standing to the side, was already dumbfounded. Although he knew the youth in purple robes before him was his master's guest, he never imagined that the youth had actually given guidance to his master, helping him complete breakthroughs in both sword profundity and cultivation. Congratulations, master. Recovering his senses, Zhou Di quickly congratulated Yang Hui, while feeling quite excited in his heart. His master was originally an existence of the Martial Emperor realm 3rd level, but with this breakthrough, he successfully stepped into the Martial Emperor realm 4th level. Combined with the sword profundity that had broken through first, his master's current strength, looking across the Martial Emperor experts and Demon Emperor experts on the surface of the Yunxiao continent, was enough to be ranked in the upper middle tier. MHM. Hearing Zhou Di's congratulations, Yang Hui nodded indifferently. You may leave now, master. However, Zhou Di did not leave immediately. Thinking of what had just happened, he decided to speak up, worried that the master's guest might take out his anger on his 2 junior brothers. After hearing Zhou Di's account, Yang Hui's brow furrowed slightly as he barked. Those 2 blind beasts. Brother Lingtian, my 2 personal disciples have offended you. I hope for your forgiveness. Following that, Yang Hui looked at Duan Lingtian apologetically. If they were just ordinary martial god disciples or followers, he wouldn't mind even if they were put to death. But the problem was that both Song Ting, 2nd disciple, and Zhongyan, 3rd disciple, were his personal disciples. He only had 3 personal disciples in total and naturally couldn't bear to lose them. There's no need for an apology, just do me a favor, Duan Lingtian said indifferently. I remember Brother Lingtian mentioned that day that you wanted my help. I wonder, what favor does Brother Lingtian need? Yang Hui nodded and asked curiously. I want to know my own origins. Duan Lingtian said. Your own origins? Yang Hui couldn't help but be stunned. Brother Lingtian, could it be you don't even know your own origins? Due to some events, my soul suffered a certain amount of trauma and I lost part of my memory, including my origins. You are a well-known martial god on the Yunxiao continent with vast influence. I believe you should be able to help me, Duan Lingtian said. So that's how it is. This is just a small matter. Yang Hui nodded, then looked at Zhou Di, who was about to leave. Pass down the order regarding this matter and make sure it is handled properly. As a martial god on the surface of the Yunxiao continent, the Lingxian Peak, controlled by Yang Hui, had its own intelligence channels. With one command, many intelligence personnel would work for him. Yes, Zhou Di respectfully complied and left. Rest assured, Brother Lingtian, with the intelligence channels of my Lingxian Peak, I believe we will soon find your origins. I believe that with your strength, as long as you are not a reclusive person, you are definitely not a mediocre and nameless person. Yang Hui said, as a martial god, he didn't need a demon-revealing mirror to vaguely see if the person before him was a demon. Yang Hui could tell that Duan Lingtian was not a demon. Precisely because of this, he could realize how outstanding Duan Lingtian was. Thank you. Duan Lingtian nodded and thanked Yang Hui. Brother Lingtian is too polite. If it weren't for your guidance last time, my sword profundity couldn't have broken through so quickly. And the subsequent breakthrough in my cultivation was also an opportunity found with the help of the breakthrough in sword profundity. Speaking of thanks, it is I who should thank you. Yang Hui laughed. I heard Zhou Di say just now that you could easily suppress him. Brother Lingtian, if I may be blunt, you don't seem to be an existence of the Martial Emperor realm. Yang Hui looked Duan Lingtian up and down, asking with a face full of doubt. Since breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm 4th level, Yang Hui's mental energy had also undergone a qualitative change, allowing him to vaguely sense whether someone was a martial god. According to the perception of his mental energy, the youth in purple robes before him did not seem to be an existence of the Martial Emperor realm, but rather only an existence of the Martial Emperor realm. That's right, I'm still some distance away from the Martial Emperor realm. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised that Ling Xin Martial Emperor, Yang Hui, could tell he wasn't a Martial Emperor powerhouse. At the same time, he guessed that Yang Hui's cultivation was above the 4th level of the Martial Emperor realm. This was because only those above the 4th level of the Martial Emperor realm could sense that he wasn't yet a Martial Emperor powerhouse. Still some distance from the Martial Emperor realm, yet you've already comprehended Sword Dao's profundity. Brother Lingtian, you truly are a prodigy in the Sword Dao. Yang Hui exclaimed. He had long witnessed Duan Lingtian's attainments in the Sword Dao and was deeply shocked and impressed. Hearing Yang Hui's exclamation, Duan Ling Tian simply smiled faintly and then curiously asked, I seem to have heard that recently. Not only has your Ling Xian Peak held selections for Martial Emperor disciples and followers, but other Martial Emperor's cultivation grounds have also held selections for Martial Emperor disciples and followers. That's right, Yang Hui nodded. All renowned Martial Emperor powerhouses and Demon Emperor powerhouses on Cloud Continent have been recruiting disciples and followers recently. Of course, just like my Ling Xian Peak, their ultimate goal is excellent Martial Emperor disciples, and even personal Martial Emperor disciples. Martial Emperor disciples must at least possess the strength of a peak martial sovereign realm. The requirements for personal Martial Emperor disciples are even higher. They are generally those who have already stepped halfway into the Martial Emperor realm. Is there a purpose for you to so grandly recruit excellent Martial Emperor disciples? Duan Ling Tian asked, guessing. Brother Duan Ling Tian, you guessed correctly. We do have a purpose. Yang Hui nodded, his expression turning somewhat solemn. Actually, this time, our grand recruitment of Martial Emperor disciples and followers is all due to an edict from the Overseas Sacred Island. Overseas Sacred Island? Edict? Duan Ling Tian looked confused. What is that? The Overseas Sacred Island has always been mysterious, so it's not strange that Brother Ling Tian doesn't know about it. Yang Hui said, the Overseas Sacred Island is an island located extremely far north of Cloud Continent, overseas. Of course, there are many islands overseas, but only 4 of them are truly vast and rich in primeval stone mines. They are the 4 great Overseas Sacred Islands. Among the 4 Overseas Sacred Islands, 1 is supreme, and the remaining 3 Overseas Sacred Islands revolve around it, belonging to a subordinate relationship. And this time, the Martial Emperor powerhouses and Demon Emperor powerhouses on our Cloud Continent have received an edict from the subordinate island closest to our Cloud Continent. That subordinate island is named Mist Concealed Island. As early as several years ago, Mist Concealed Island dispatched an envoy to instruct us to each bring 10 of our most outstanding disciples to participate in the Mist Concealed Martial Arts Assembly a few years later. Not long ago, the Mist Concealed Island envoy arrived again, stating that the Mist Concealed Martial Arts Assembly would be brought forward by 1 year. Therefore, we held the selection for Martial Emperor disciples and followers 1 year earlier than planned. Yang Hui continued, is that Mist Concealed Island very formidable? To be able to command you all? Duan Ling Tian asked. Mist Concealed Island is indeed very formidable. However, the reason we are cooperating with Mist Concealed Island's edict is not just because Mist Concealed Island is formidable, but more so because of the rewards promised by the Mist Concealed Martial Arts Assembly. In the Mist Concealed Martial Arts Assembly, whichever Martial Emperor or Demon Emperor's disciples perform exceptionally will earn sacred stones. When sacred stones were mentioned, Yang Hui's breathing became somewhat rapid. Sacred stones. Duan Ling Tian was puzzled. That's right, sacred stones. Yang Hui nodded. Sacred stones, to some extent, are similar to primeval stones. However, even top-grade primeval stones are far less valuable than sacred stones. Even a Martial Emperor powerhouse, once they obtain a sacred stone, their cultivation can rapidly improve, advancing 1,000 miles a day. Let me put it this way. A being at the first level of the Martial Emperor realm, if they obtain a sacred stone and fully absorb its power, they can break through to the second level of the Martial Emperor realm in one go. And it's a breakthrough in a short period. Yang Hui introduced. That exaggerated? Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be startled. This was the first time he had heard of sacred stones. Although he had a vast amount of knowledge in his mind, there was no record of sacred stones. Now that he heard about the effect of sacred stones, he couldn't help but be shocked. One sacred stone could allow a first-level Martial Emperor realm martial artist to break through to the second-level Martial Emperor realm in a short period, simply defying the heavens. It's that exaggerated. Yang Hui's eyes were filled with longing, and only when he looked at Duan Ling Tian again did he restrain himself. Now, you should understand why we are so attentive to Mist Concealed Island's edict, right? Duan Ling Tian nodded. After knowing the effect of sacred stones, he could understand the feelings of the group of Martial Emperor powerhouses and Demon Emperor powerhouses, including Yang Hui. Which Martial Emperor powerhouse or Demon Emperor powerhouse doesn't want to rapidly improve their cultivation? For this, let alone just asking them to bring people to participate in some mist-concealed martial arts assembly. Even if they were asked to do other difficult things, they wouldn't bat an eyelid. Sacred stones. Where exactly do they come from? Duan Ling Tian was full of curiosity about this. I'm not entirely sure where sacred stones specifically come from, but one thing is certain, sacred stones are not products of those 4 overseas sacred islands. For this, I even specifically asked the envoy from Mist-Concealed Island. Yang Hui said, although Duan Ling Tian had countless questions about sacred stones, he also knew that at his current level, he couldn't access that information yet. Therefore, he didn't ask any more questions. He believed that as long as he reached that level, all his confusions would be resolved. How much do you know about that Mist-Concealed Island? Duan Ling Tian asked. I only heard about Mist-Concealed Island after breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm, Yang Hui said. Mist-Concealed Island is located extremely far north of Cloud Continent, beyond the extreme north. Leaving Cloud Continent and heading to Mist-Concealed Island, even a first-level Martial Emperor realm martial artist traveling at full speed would need half a year. A first-level Martial Emperor realm martial artist traveling at full speed for half a year. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be startled. That far? Distance is secondary. The most important thing is that along the way to Mist-Concealed Island, in the seas we pass through, we occasionally encounter many demons from the sea, and among them, there are even Demon Emperor realm existences. Furthermore, once the Martial Emperor powerhouses on our Cloud Continent reach a certain level of strength and have no more pursuits on Cloud Continent, they will all head to Mist-Concealed Island to embark on a new journey. Because of this, Mist-Concealed Island can be said to be teeming with powerful individuals, like me. Although I am a 4th-level Martial Emperor realm existence, once I arrive at Mist-Concealed Island, I still have to be extremely cautious and humble. Yang Hui continued, introducing everything about Mist-Concealed Island to Duan Ling Tian. Martial Emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent have gone to Mist-Concealed Island. Duan Ling Tian nodded. At this moment, he felt as if a mysterious world was slowly opening its doors to him, eagerly awaiting his arrival. Yang Hui nodded, and at the same time said, leaving others aside, the Mist-Concealed Island envoy who came to find me recently was once a Martial Emperor powerhouse renowned throughout Cloud Continent. When he rose to fame on Cloud Continent, I had just broken through to the Martial Sovereign realm not long ago. Towards the end, Yang Hui sighed with emotion, seemingly recalling his own past. Since Mist-Concealed Island is willing to give you sacred stones for that Mist-Concealed Martial Arts Assembly, it must not be an ordinary martial arts assembly. Do you know Mist-Concealed Island's purpose? Duan Ling Tian asked. Since sacred stones were so precious, he didn't think Mist-Concealed Island would be so kind. He figured there must be a huge scheme behind this Mist-Concealed Martial Arts Assembly. I haven't heard about that. However, I suspect Mist-Concealed Island definitely has something thereafter. Yang Hui said, as a Martial Emperor powerhouse, he was naturally not foolish and could easily guess this point. Are there any requirements for participants in the Mist-Concealed Martial Arts Assembly? Duan Ling Tian asked again. Yes, Yang Hui nodded. According to the envoy from Mist-Concealed Island, those who participate in the Mist-Concealed Martial Arts Assembly must be individuals whose age can be measured by an age-measuring pearl. Under 70 years old, Duan Ling Tian had some understanding of the age-measuring pearl, knowing that it could only measure the age of people up to 70 years old. People over 70 years old could not be measured. Yes, Yang Hui nodded again. Then, the two chatted for a while, after which Yang Hui arranged a residence for Duan Ling Tian, not far from his own, also an independent small courtyard on a small stone platform. In the courtyard, there was a small house. Brother Ling Tian, I will do my best to investigate your origin. However, regarding the sacred stones, I hope you won't spread it. You should know that even my personal senior disciple doesn't know about the existence of sacred stones. Leading Duan Ling Tian to the entrance of the small house, Yang Hui said to Duan Ling Tian. Understood. Duan Ling Tian nodded. He naturally knew Yang Hui's intention in concealing the matter of the sacred stones. It was nothing more than fear that his Martial Emperor disciples would think he was making them take risks for the sake of the sacred stones. In that case, I shall take my leave first. Yang Hui prepared to leave. Wait. However, Duan Ling Tian stopped him at the right moment. What? Do you still have something? Yang Hui asked. There's something I hope you can help with. Duan Lingtian said. Speak, Yang Hui said readily. Among those who came to participate in the Lingxian Peak Martial Emperor disciple and follower selection, there is a pair of twin brothers with the compound surname Nangong. They have already passed the second round of selection, and becoming Martial Emperor followers is a certainty. If possible, I hope you can take care of them a little. Duan Lingtian said to Yang Hui. They are brother Lingtians. Yang Hui looked at Duan Lingtian, but before he could finish asking, Duan Lingtian interrupted him. They are my friends. Since they are brother Lingtian's friends, they are naturally my friends as well. Brother Lingtian can rest assured, I will certainly not neglect them, Yang Hui quickly said. After Yang Hui left, Duan Lingtian sat at the stone table in the courtyard, murmuring to himself, Mist Concealment Martial Gathering. Earlier, when mentioning the Mist Concealment Martial Gathering, Yang Hui had intentionally wanted him to represent Lingxian Peak in the Mist Concealment Martial Gathering. Moreover, for any saint stones obtained because of him, Yang Hui was willing to give them all to him. For Yang Hui, the Mist Concealment Martial Gathering was not only about wanting to obtain saint stones, but also more about hoping that the people from his Lingxian Peak could overpower the other Martial Emperor experts and Demon Emperor experts on Yunshao Continent. On Yunshao Continent, Martial Emperor experts and Demon Emperor experts were as numerous as clouds, and it was naturally common for them to compare themselves with each other. Especially this time, Yang Hui's strength had greatly improved. If his disciples failed to perform in the Mist Concealment Martial Gathering, he would undoubtedly be laughed at. Martial Emperor experts placed great importance on face. Bastard, do you know about Saint Stones? Duan Lingtian asked the soul hidden within his body, the soul of Wang Ba. He always felt that Wang Ba should know about Saint Stones. However, no matter how he called out, Wang Ba gave no response, as if he had fallen into a deep sleep. Strange, this guy hasn't made a sound for over half a year. Seeing that Wang Ba didn't respond for a long time, Duan Lingtian stopped calling him. He stood up on his own, returned to his room, and sat cross-legged on the bed to cultivate. 9 dragons wore venerable art. Divine Dragon Transformation. Divine Dragon Transformation was the 9th and final transformation of the 9 dragons wore venerable art. It could help one improve their cultivation from the Martial Emperor realm all the way to the Martial Emperor realm. Over the past half year, Duan Lingtian had also rebuilt his own cultivation, surpassing even his peak strength from before. In the past, Duan Lingtian was only at the Martial Emperor realm 4th level. Now, after half a year of cultivation, with the help of the powerful medicinal effects of the Nirvana pill, his cultivation had rapidly improved. To this day, he had already broken through to the Martial Emperor realm 6th level. He was also not far from reaching the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. Of course, the reason his cultivation could improve so much wasn't entirely due to the powerful medicinal effects of the Nirvana pill. More importantly, it was because of breaking and then establishing. Breaking and then establishing sounded mysterious, but Duan Lingtian could clearly feel the tremendous changes these 4 words had brought him. Since his dantian was repaired, cultivating had indeed become twice as effective with half the effort. Coupled with the medicinal effects of the Nirvana pill, it was even more exaggerated. Of course, over the past half year, the most exaggerated improvement in Duan Lingtian's strength wasn't his cultivation, but the 2 profound truths he had comprehended, fusion profundity and sword profundity. Perhaps it's because my soul was once suppressed by the remnant soul power from the demon sealing steel, which caused some changes, making it easier for me to comprehend those 2 profound truths. In the end, Duan Lingtian could only think this way, and it was likely the only reason. Gradually, Duan Lingtian stopped overthinking and continued to cultivate and comprehend the 2 profound truths. He believed, with his current cultivation speed, it shouldn't take too long to break through to the Martial Emperor realm. While Duan Lingtian was cultivating, Lingxian Peak also began using its intelligence channels to investigate Duan Lingtian's background, conducting a carpet-like search centered around Lingxian Peak. As for the selection of Martial Emperor disciples and followers at Lingxian Peak, it was still ongoing. It is worth mentioning, when Nangong Chun and Nangong Yi, the 2 brothers, were preparing to participate in the 3rd round of selection, they were taken away by Zhong'an. Lord Zhong'an, where are you taking us? The Nangong brothers followed behind Zhong'an, and Nangong Yi asked somewhat nervously. He was worried that Zhongin might target them to get back at Duan Lingtian. Brother, please don't call me Lord. I can't bear it. Also, I only know that you two brothers have the surname Nangong, but I don't know your names. Hearing Nangong Yi's words, Zhongin shuddered and hurriedly waved his hands. At the same time, he looked at the Nangong brothers with a friendly expression. What a joke. The two people before him were guests his master, Martial Emperor Lingxian of Lingxian Peak, had asked him to invite. If his master found out they called him Lord, he would definitely face consequences. Zhongin's friendliness left the Nangong brothers somewhat bewildered. Nangong Chun, Nangong Yi. After a while, they snapped out of it and introduced themselves. Now, they also vaguely guessed that the reason this Martial Emperor's direct disciple Zhong and was so polite to them was almost certainly because of Duan Lingtian. So it's Brother Nangong Chun and Brother Nangong Yi. If you two brothers think highly of me, just call me Brother Zhong. How about that? Zhongin said with a smile. Brother Zhong, are you taking us to see Duan Lingtian? Having guessed why Zhongin was so polite to them, Nangong Yi felt somewhat at ease and asked curiously. No. Zhongin shook his head. No. Hearing Zhongin's words, not only Nangong Yi, but even Nangong Chun couldn't help but be stunned. Earlier, Master ordered me to take you to see him. Zhongin said. Boom. As soon as Zhongin said this, it was like a bolt from the blue, shocking the Nangong brothers into a daze. The master Zhongin mentioned was undoubtedly the master of Lingxian Peak, Martial Emperor Lingxian. Now, Martial Emperor Lingxian wanted to see them? When the two snapped back to reality and looked at each other, they could see shock in each other's eyes. Nangong Chun was relatively calm. Nangong Yi, however, looked terrified. Although he really wanted to meet Martial Emperor Lingxian, he hadn't expected to do so soon. Of course, he also knew that all of this was thanks to Duan Lingtian. South of the inland, two figures shot through the sky, heading straight for a steep peak in the distance, Lingtian Peak. Lingtian Peak was precisely the location of the Lingtian sect. A moment later, the two figures arrived at Lingtian Peak and revealed themselves, a yellow-clothed maiden and a white-clothed little girl. The yellow-clothed maiden's eyes sparkled with a mischievous light. The white-clothed little girl, however, wore a stern expression on her young, cute face, looking like a little adult. Sister Xuanai, what should we do now? How can we find brother? The white-clothed little girl looked at the yellow-clothed maiden and asked. This white-clothed little girl was none other than the little white python from back then, Xiaobai. As for the yellow-clothed maiden, she was Han Xuanai. After obtaining clues about Duan Lingtian in the Lost Stone Forest, they had searched but found no trace of Duan Lingtian. In the end, they had no choice but to temporarily give up and look for another method. Let's go find Xiao Jin and Xiao He. Perhaps we should stir up some big commotion. Han Xuanai's mischievous eyes flashed as she spoke. Big commotion? Xiaobai looked puzzled, but still followed Han Xuanai as she set off to find Xiao Jin and Xiao He. She knew that once she saw Xiao Jin and Xiao He, she would understand what Sister Xuanai meant by big commotion. After Han Xuanai and the three little fellows gathered and secretly plotted for a while, a plan was formed that would shake the entire inland of Yunshao continent in the coming period. When this plan reached the ears of Luo Ping and Zhang San, the two vice sect masters of Lingtian sect, they were so shocked they couldn't speak for a long time. And this plan was quickly put into action. Han Xuanai, Xiaobai, Xiao He, and Xiao Jin each left Yunshao continent, heading in 4 different directions. Not long after, astonishing news began to arrive. One after another, first-rate factions announced their allegiance to Lingtian sect. Besides paying large amounts of yuan stones to Lingtian sect annually, they also gave up their most outstanding disciples. These outstanding disciples from each faction all joined Lingtian sect one by one, becoming part of the sect. The originally empty Lingtian sect suddenly became lively. Those 4 little ancestors, really, Zhang San and Luo Ping, the 2 vice sect masters of Lingtian sect, gathered together, their faces filled with nothing but shock. Where did Duan Lingtian meet these little freaks? After learning all this, young Marshal Chun couldn't help but smile bitterly. Young master, Lingtian sect is no longer what it used to be. I'm afraid it won't be long before young Miss Xuan Nai and Xiao He, Xiaobai, and Xiao Jin unify all the first-rate factions south of the inland. At the peak of Lingtian Peak, Xiongquan stood there, murmuring to himself. Now, we just wait for you and young Miss Tian Wu to return. Yes, master, please come back soon. Besides Xiongquan, Golden Fiend stood there, also longing for the return of his master, the sect master of Lingtian's sect. "Hey, kid Golden Fiend." Suddenly, a voice came from afar. By the time Golden Fiend and Xiongquan reacted, another person had appeared before them. It was a gold-clothed little girl, Xiao Jin. Seeing the newcomer, Xiongquan's eyes lit up. In contrast, Golden Fiend shuddered for no reason and said with a bitter face, "Little ancestor, what do you need from me?" He felt a deep-seated fear toward the gold-clothed little girl before him. "Of course, I have something good for you." The gold-clothed little girl was Xiao Jin, also the jade-eyed heaven-reaching rat that had once followed Duan Lingtian. "Something good." Golden Fiend looked at Xiao Jin with suspicion. Smack! Before he could react, Xiao Jin slapped him on the forehead. "I say, kid Golden Fiend, don't you believe me?" I wouldn't dare. Golden Fiend quickly shrank his head and whispered, in front of Xiao Jin, as a hell golden fur dog. He was as docile as a cat. "Take this." Xiao Jin raised her hand and handed a pill-like object glowing with brilliant light to Golden Fiend. "Little ancestor, what is this?" Golden Fiend was stunned at first, but when he carefully examined what Xiao Jin handed him, his pupils couldn't help but contract, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Inner core. Golden Fiend looked at Xiao Jin with a trembling face. "Little ancestor, is this Demon Emperor inner core?" Inner cores are typically only found within powerful fierce beasts and demonic beasts. However, only fierce beasts and peak demonic beasts, known as demon emperors, can leave behind an inner core after death. As is well known, once a fierce beast breaks through to the void-prying realm, it transforms into a demonic beast. From the moment a fierce beast transforms into a demonic beast, its inner core becomes closely linked to its own power, forming a symbiotic relationship. This symbiotic relationship cannot be broken unless one breaks through to the Martial Emperor realm. This also means that ordinary demonic beasts, even if killed, will not leave behind an inner core, because the moment they are killed, their inner core shatters as their power dissipates. Only powerful demonic beasts that have broken through to the Martial Emperor realm can separate their inner core from their own power. At this point, if they are killed, their inner core will benefit others. If a demon emperor inner core is consumed by a demon sovereign, it can rapidly enhance their cultivation. For a demon sovereign, whose cultivation is already profound, as long as they can comprehend emperor realm profundity, breaking through to the demon emperor realm with the help of a demon emperor inner core is not difficult. Of course, a demon emperor inner core can only be directly consumed by a demon sovereign. Human martial emperors cannot directly consume it. There is a way for human martial emperors to consume it. They just need a grade 1 alchemist to spend some time refining it into a pill with other medicinal ingredients. However, the pill formation rate for such a pill is extremely low, even for the most excellent grade 1 alchemists. Therefore, the Demon Emperor inner core is far less beneficial to human martial emperors than it is to demon sovereigns. That's right. This is a Demon Emperor inner core. Facing the excited Jin Sha, Little Gold nodded and handed the Demon Emperor inner core to Jin Sha. Jin Sha's hands trembled even more violently as he took the inner core. A Demon Emperor inner core? Xiongquan, who was nearby, was greatly surprised. Little Gold. Did you kill a Demon Emperor? Little Gold nodded, saying casually, "I killed a guy who didn't know his place." "Wasn't your target the first-rate forces south of the mainland? How did you provoke a Demon Emperor?" Xiongquan asked curiously. "My target was indeed the first-rate forces, but that Demon Emperor seemed to have received a favor from that force many years ago, so he rushed out in time, wanting to protect them. He even dared to attack me first, but I ended up killing him instead," Little Gold said, as if talking about something insignificant. "I didn't expect a first-rate force to have a Demon Emperor protecting it." Xiongquan sighed. "It was just a guy at Demon Emperor Realm, first level," Little Gold said indifferently. Although she didn't elaborate, her tone clearly conveyed disdain. "Only Demon Emperor Realm, first level." Hearing Little Gold's words, Xiongquan and Jin Sha, who had recovered from his shock, exchanged glances, both dumbfounded. For them, even a Demon Emperor Realm first-level existence was enough to crush them with a single finger. "Little Ant, I'm going back to cultivate first." Having obtained the Demon Emperor inner core, Jin Sha was eager to return and cultivate. He believed that with the help of this Demon Emperor inner core, he would soon be able to smoothly break through to Demon Sovereign Realm 9th level. Once he comprehended Emperor Realm profundity, he would be able to break through to the Demon Emperor Realm in one go and become a Demon Emperor expert. Go cultivate quickly. When you break through to the Demon Emperor Realm, I'll take you out to sea to have some fun. There are quite a few Demon Emperors beyond the sea, and there, you can get more Demon Emperor intercourse. Little Gold nodded, her eyes shining as she spoke the latter part. Yes, Jinsha also felt his blood boil with excitement. He hurriedly turned and left, busy with his cultivation. Little Gold, you can even kill an existence at Demon Emperor Realm 1st level. What is your cultivation level now? After Jinsha left, Xiongquan looked Little Gold up and down, asking curiously. He never imagined that the inconspicuous little golden mouse from back then had achieved such accomplishments, leaving him profoundly shocked from the bottom of his heart. Young master, please come back soon. Come back and see the 3 little ones, and see Miss Xuanai. Xiongquan muttered to himself. In response to Xiongquan's question, Little Gold simply smiled mysteriously, without answering. Whoosh! The next moment, Little Gold vanished into thin air before Xiongquan's eyes, clearly having left. Seeing this, Xiongquan shook his head with a helpless smile. With Han Xuanai, Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold taking action, the first-rate forces south of the mainland were one by one subdued, becoming subsidiary sects of Heavenly Emperor Sect. For a time, the prestige of the Heavenly Emperor Sect was soaring in the southern region of the Cloud Heaven continent. The remaining first-rate forces that had not yet fallen were all in a state of panic, knowing that in the near future, the Heavenly Emperor Sect would make a move against them. Is the Heavenly Emperor Sect being too exaggerated? Is it planning to unify the southern region of the mainland? In various places across the southern region of the mainland, many people speculated this, and the Heavenly Emperor Sect's current exaggerated actions indeed seemed to indicate such an intention. However, just as the first-rate forces in the southern mainland that had not yet fallen were in a state of panic, Han Xuanai and the other 3 stopped their actions, as if by prior agreement, and returned to the Heavenly Emperor Sect. And they had indeed agreed. For the next period, don't be careless. You should patrol Heavenly Emperor Peak more often. By my reckoning, it should be almost time for them to arrive. Han Xuanai said to Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold. Her words sounded as if she was worried that someone might launch a surprise attack on the Heavenly Emperor Sect. Yes, Sister Xuanai. The 3 of them, Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold, nodded obediently. Compared to their decisive and fierce demeanor outside, they seemed like completely different people. Time quietly slipped by. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! Outside Heavenly Emperor Peak, the air fluctuated, and a figure appeared out of thin air. This was an old man in gray clothes, with an ordinary appearance, but his eyes were sharp and bright eyes. His face was calm, as if he could remain unfazed even if Mount Tai collapsed before him. Heavenly Emperor Sect. Suddenly, the gray-robed old man's gaze sharpened as he stared at the steep mountain peak in the distance, muttering to himself. Immediately after, the gray-robed old man vanished again, reappearing on one side of Heavenly Emperor Peak. Stop! However, before he could enter Heavenly Emperor Peak, he was stopped. It was a tender girl's voice that stopped him, causing him to involuntarily pause. When he came back to his senses, he found that the one blocking his path was actually a little girl in golden clothes, an inconspicuous little girl. Demon Emperor? However, the gray-robed old man did not underestimate her just because a little girl appeared before him. Instead, his expression became somewhat solemn. An old fellow from the Han clan? Facing the gray-robed old man's almost questioning tone, Little Gold completely ignored it, instead asking indifferently, "Did you kill Han Jing?" The gray-robed old man's eyes gleamed with cold light as he asked in a deep voice. Han Jing. Little Gold paused for a moment, then reacted. "It seems you really are an old fellow from the Han clan. Are you here to avenge that guy who didn't know his place?" As she spoke the latter part, cold light flickered in Little Gold's eyes. "Anyone who kills someone from my Han clan, no matter who they are, must pay the price," the gray-robed old man said indifferently, his words filled with an undeniable tone. "Is that so?" Just before Little Gold could react, an indifferent voice came from far and near. As the voice reached the ears of the gray-robed old man and Little Gold, a figure appeared at the opportune moment. This was a young girl in yellow clothes, who looked only 15 or 16 years old. Her slightly tender face was beautiful, and one could tell at a glance that she would definitely grow into a peerless beauty. The young girl in yellow had lively eyes, clearly indicating she was a mischievous and eccentric person. However, her current expression was somewhat gloomy, like a sky about to rain, covered with dark clouds. It's best for those who are not involved to leave. If you are caught in the crossfire, you cannot blame this old man. The gray-robed old man looked at the young girl in yellow and said calmly, his words containing a hint of threat. Not involved. The young girl in yellow sized up the gray-robed old man for a while before saying indifferently, "What if the person you're talking about was killed by my own hands?" Immediately, the gray-robed old man's face changed drastically, his eyes gleaming with murderous intent, as if he wanted to devour someone. "Sister Xuanai, let me handle this old fellow." Little Gold looked at the young girl in yellow, saying with an expectant expression. The young girl in yellow was indeed Han Xuanai. Just as Han Xuanai said, that Han clan expert, Han Jing, had indeed died by her hands. "If you want him, he's yours," Han Xuanai said, seemingly not caring whether she personally dealt with the gray-robed old man. "Thank you, Sister Xuanai." Receiving Han Xuanai's approval, Little Gold's eyes lit up. She then looked at the gray-robed old man, who was staring intently at Han Xuanai, and coldly shouted, "Hey, old fellow, your opponent is me." As soon as her voice fell, Little Gold moved, transforming into a golden lightning bolt, shooting directly towards the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed old man reacted and engaged in a fierce battle with Little Gold. At first, the two were evenly matched. However, as time passed, Little Gold gradually began to fall into a disadvantage. After Little Gold fell into a disadvantage, she was in an extremely sorry state, while the gray-robed old man pressed his advantage, intending to kill the little girl who appeared to be no older than 10. "Sister Xuanai, help." At once, Little Gold frantically called for help from Han Xuanai. This was no longer a game. If she were killed, she would be completely finished. Humph. Almost the instant Little Gold's words fell, Han Xuanai let out a low snort. With a lift of her hand, she made no discernible movement. Bang! A loud bang echoed. The gray-robed old man, who had been pursuing Little Gold, was sent flying, leaving behind a trail of blooming blood flowers, which were the congested blood he continuously spat out. Shadowless palm across space. "You, how do you know my Han clan's ancestral martial art?" Soon, the gray-robed old man, who had been sent flying and barely managed to stop himself, his face changed drastically. The shadowless palm across the void is the protective martial art of the Han clan, an ancient clan on the Cloud Continent. This martial art even surpasses high-grade heaven-rank martial arts, and within the Han clan, not everyone is permitted to cultivate it. As one of the strongest individuals in the Han clan, the old man in gray was well aware of this. He was also one of the few in the Han clan who had cultivated the shadowless palm across the void. Not only did he know that the shadowless palm across the void was a powerful martial art that surpassed high-grade heaven-rank martial arts, but he also knew that this martial art had entered the ranks of Saint-grade martial arts. Saint-grade martial arts was a term passed down from ancient times in the Han clan, said to originate from a distant place, referring to martial arts that surpassed high-grade heaven-rank martial arts. The old man in gray stared intently at Han Xuanai, his face pale and devoid of color, filled with shock and disbelief. Shadowless palm across the void. Hearing the old man in gray's words, Han Xuanai was first startled, then scoffed. "Are you sure what I just used was the shadowless palm across the void?" As soon as she finished speaking, without waiting for the old man's reply, Han Xuanai struck again, and waves of cold energy spread through the air, followed by a biting chill that emanated a pervasive coldness. At the same time, gusts of cold wind swept through. Bang, 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 bang. Loud bangs echoed as the light shield around the old man in gray was shattered with destructive force. In an instant, he was engulfed by cold energy from all directions, transforming completely into an ice sculpture. Faintly visible within the ice sculpture, around the old man in gray's body, were distinct palm prints, as if he had been struck many times. "Now, do you still think this is the shadowless palm across the void?" Han Xuanai asked calmly. At the same time, she slowly raised her hand, and the ice sculpture around the old man in gray's body vanished into thin air, as if it had never existed. Wah! As soon as the ice sculpture around his body disappeared, The old man in gray's body trembled violently. Then he spat out a mouthful of clotted blood, his body swaying precariously, on the verge of death. It wasn't until he took out a pill and swallowed it that his complexion improved slightly. If Duan Ling Tian were here, he would surely recognize that the healing pill the old man in gray took was the quasi-emperor grade resurrection pill, which he was all too familiar with. It's not the shadowless palm across the void. Hearing Han Xuanai's words, the old man in gray couldn't help but shiver, looking at Han Xuanai with a terrified expression, his heart filled with shock. Although it has the shadow of the shadowless palm across the void, it's a martial art even more powerful than the shadowless palm across the void. Saint grade martial art. It's a saint grade martial art. And it's a saint grade martial art even more powerful than the shadowless palm across the void. Who exactly is she? To my knowledge, only 2 ancient clans on the entire Cloud Continent, including our Han clan, possess saint grade martial arts. She actually knows saint grade martial arts, and it's a saint grade ultimate art even more powerful than our Han clan's shadowless palm across the void. Could she be from that place? As he thought further, the old man in gray seemed to recall something, and his gaze towards Han Xuanai was as if he had seen a ghost. The Han clan, as one of the 2 ancient clans on the Cloud Continent with a legacy spanning 10,000 years, knew many things that ordinary Cloud Continent martial artists did not, including that there were other continents beyond the Cloud Continent. Not only that, according to the secret scrolls passed down through generations of the Han clan, scrolls that only direct descendants of the Han clan were qualified to read, it was recorded. The first clan leader of the Han clan ancestor who single-handedly established the Han clan, was not from the Cloud Continent, but from another continent. According to that Han clan ancestor, in the continent where he originally resided, even cultivators at the Martial Emperor realm were merely at the peak of mortals. On that continent, there were many existences that surpassed mortals. Dao Martial Saintland. That was the name of that continent. I've long heard from Qing Nu that, on the Cloud Continent, there's a family that can barely be considered a branch of our clan, the Han clan. At some point, Han Xuanai spoke calmly, not knowing whether she was speaking to the old man in gray or to herself. The fact that they could pass down the shadowless palm across the void indicates that the person who founded this Han clan was, at the very least, a collateral descendant of our clan. Boom. Han Xuanai's seemingly self-talk, upon reaching the old man in gray's ears, was like a clap of thunder. Miss, you just said, our Han clan's ancestor was a collateral descendant of your clan. The old man in gray asked, his voice trembling. As a direct descendant of the Han clan, and a former Han clan leader, the old man in gray's understanding of the Han clan was no less than anyone else in the current Han clan. According to the scrolls left by the ancestor, when the ancestor was still in that Dao Martial Saint land, he was indeed a collateral disciple of a major clan. Although the ancestor did not elaborate on that major clan, between the lines, he did state that that major clan held a crucial position in the Dao Martial Saint land. Thinking of this, when the old man in gray looked at Han Xuanai, his body trembled with fear. Having witnessed the saint-grade martial art that the young girl had previously displayed, he vaguely guessed that the other party was very likely from that mysterious Dao Martial Saint land. The saint-grade martial art displayed by the young girl surpassed the saint-grade martial arts of both their Han clan and the other ancient clan, and the saint-grade martial arts of their 2 clans were both passed down from that mysterious Dao Martial Saint land. It was precisely because of this that he made such a guess. And now, hearing the young girl's almost self-talk, based on the relevant information recorded in the scrolls left by their Han clan ancestor, he vaguely guessed that the other party was very likely from the same major clan as their Han clan ancestor. Moreover, the saint-grade ultimate art displayed by the other party still showed traces of the shadowless palm across the void, and was more like an upgraded version of the shadowless palm across the void. All these connections made him unable to help but suspect that Han Xuanai's identity was very likely related to their Han clan ancestor and to their Han clan. What? Do you think I'm shamelessly trying to associate myself with your Han clan? Hearing the old man in gray's question, Han Xuanai said disdainfully, if I'm not mistaken, with your strength, even if you're not the strongest in the Han clan, you can at least rank among the top 3. Do you think my strength is inferior to the strongest person in your Han clan today? As she spoke, Han Xuanai's tone became increasingly disdainful. No, I didn't mean that. Miss, I really didn't mean that. Hearing Han Xuanai's words, the old man in gray immediately panicked. Just as the young girl in front of him said, his strength, though not the strongest in the Han clan, could still rank among the top 3. However, even when facing the strongest person in the Han clan, he wouldn't be as disheveled and utterly helpless as he was in front of the young girl. Sister Xuanai, why waste so much breath on him? If you ask me, just kill him. Little Gold stood to the side, speaking calmly, while also glaring at the old man in gray. Hey, didn't you want to avenge that Han Jing? My sister Xuanai is right here. Hurry up and make your move. Hearing Little Gold's words, the old man in gray's face, which had just regained some color, turned pale again, and he said frantically, Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. I came here today just to find out how Han Jing died. Since he was killed by you, miss, then he must have brought it upon himself. He deserved to die. The old man in gray looked at Han Xuanai, speaking with a terrified expression. Moreover, miss, you and our Han clan have quite a deep connection. Please, for the sake of our Han clan ancestor, spare me this time. The old man in gray pleaded with Han Xuanai. Is your surname Han? Han Xuanai asked calmly. Yes, my name is Han Tong. The old man hastily replied, not daring to be negligent in the slightest. You can ask me not to kill you, but you must make amends. Han Xuanai said. Sister Xuanai. Little Gold frowned upon hearing Han Xuanai's words. She wished the old man who had almost killed her just now would die immediately. Little Gold, he's still useful. Han Xuanai comforted her. Little Gold nodded. Although she was still somewhat displeased, she did not dare to disobey Han Xuanai's words. Please speak. Miss, please speak. Han Tong said humbly, as if deeply afraid that Han Xuanai would change her mind. Use the power of your Han clan to help me find someone. Han Xuanai added. Spirit Xian Peak. Near Martial Emperor Ling Xian's residence, 2 more wooden houses had appeared, each standing on a small stone platform. These 2 wooden houses were clearly newly erected. The 2 wooden houses were inhabited by the brothers Nangong Chun and Nangong. Since their last meeting with Martial Emperor Ling Xian, they had been living here. According to Martial Emperor Ling Xian, since they were Duan Ling Tian's friends, they were also his friends. He found it inconvenient to take them as disciples or apprentices, but he could permit them to stay on Spirit Xian Peak as guests. Although they were guests, they could enjoy all the treatment of Martial Emperor's direct disciples. This left the Nangong brothers both shocked and delighted. Shocked by Martial Emperor Ling Xian's high regard for Duan Ling Tian, and delighted to be able to stay on Spirit Xian Peak and enjoy the treatment of direct disciples. According to Martial Emperor Ling Xian, they could stay on Spirit Xian Peak for as long as they wished, and if they ever didn't want to stay, they could leave at any time. Even if they left, they could return at any time. Another wooden house, standing on a nearby stone platform, was Duan Ling Tian's residence. However, since the Nangong brothers arrived, they had not seen Duan Ling Tian leave his residence, so they had not met Duan Ling Tian. Days passed, one after another. On this day, Martial Emperor Ling Xian, Yang Hui, left his residence and arrived in front of Duan Ling Tian's residence. Brother Ling Tian. Yang Hui called out to the inside. Moments later, the door of the wooden house where Duan Ling Tian resided opened, and Duan Ling Tian flew out, standing face to face with Yang Hui. What? Is there news? Duan Ling Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. In Duan Ling Tian's opinion, Yang Hui coming to him uninvited most likely meant he had uncovered his origin. However, he quickly realized he had overestimated Yang Hui. No news yet. Yang Hui knew what Duan Ling Tian was asking, so he immediately shook his head. Brother Ling Tian, you know, Cloud Continent, even just the inner land, is extremely vast. It will take more time to find out your origin. Duan Ling Tian nodded, a little disappointed, then asked, Did you come to me for something else? Yes. Yang Hui nodded and said, I just came to let Brother Ling Tian know we will be departing in 10 days. Departing? Duan Ling Tian was startled at first, then reacted and asked, Mistfall Island? Yes. Yang Hui nodded again. Got it. Duan Ling Tian replied, and seeing that Yang Hui had nothing else to say, he returned to his room to continue cultivating and comprehending the 2 profound truths. His strength was also increasing at an extremely fast pace. 10 days is not a long time even for ordinary people, let alone for Duan Ling Tian, who cultivated day and night. It passed in the blink of an eye. I've recovered a lot more memories. but I still can't remember who I am. Stepping out of the wooden house, Duan Ling Tian shook his somewhat groggy head and muttered, Duan Ling Tian. Not long after he left the wooden house, two familiar voices reached Duan Ling Tian's ears. As he focused his gaze towards the source of the sound, he found it was Nangong Yi calling him. Beside Nangong Yi stood an aloof figure, who was Nangong Chun. Why are you two here? Seeing the two, Duan Ling Tian was a little surprised. We were able to cultivate here thanks to you, Nangong Yi said with a smile, then proceeded to explain how they were brought here by Ling Xian Martial Emperor's third direct disciple, Zhong'en, and how Ling Xian Martial Emperor intended to look after them. So that's how it is. Duan Ling Tian suddenly understood. That's good. You can stay on Ling Xian Peak as you wished. With the treatment of a Martial Emperor's direct disciple, I imagine your future achievements won't be low. Duan Ling Tian, I heard that Martial Emperor is taking 10 people, including his 3 direct disciples, on a long journey today. Are you coming out now to go with him? Nangong Yi asked curiously. Brother Ling Tian, it's time to depart. Before Duan Ling Tian could speak, a familiar voice descended from high in the sky, reaching Duan Ling Tian's ears and the eyes of the Nangong brothers. It's Martial Emperor. The Nangong brothers immediately recognized the voice as Ling Xian Martial Emperor and simultaneously confirmed that Duan Ling Tian was indeed leaving with Ling Xian Martial Emperor. After greeting the Nangong brothers, Duan Ling Tian soared towards the source of the voice. A moment later, he saw the master of Ling Xian Peak, Ling Xian Martial Emperor, Yang Hui. Yang Hui stood there, with 3 figures closely behind him. These 3 were not strangers to Duan Ling Tian. They were Yang Hui's 3 direct disciples, and also the only 3 Martial Emperor direct disciples on Ling Xian Peak, Zhou Di, Song Ting, and Zhong'en. Behind the 3, there were 6 other people. To Duan Ling Tian, these 6 were all new faces. He hadn't seemed to have seen them before. Of course, even if he had forgotten. Seeing Duan Ling Tian arrive, Yang Hui warmly welcomed him to his side. As for his 3 direct disciples behind him, Zhou Di and Zhong'en both smiled and nodded at him as a greeting. Only Song Ting's expression had been unpleasant ever since Duan Ling Tian appeared. Let alone greeting Duan Ling Tian, it was already good that he didn't start a fight with Duan Ling Tian. Senior Ling Tian. The remaining 6, at Zhou Di's signal, all respectfully bowed to Duan Ling Tian one by one, addressing him as senior. And the current Duan Ling Tian was indeed worthy of this honorific. At least, he was worthy of this honorific in front of these people. Depart. As Yang Hui spoke, a vast and immense invisible force surged forth, instantly enveloping everyone, including Duan Ling Tian, without exception. Immediately after, Duan Ling Tian only felt a blur before his eyes, and the next moment, he felt his body passively flying forward. Only then did he realize that Yang Hui was taking him and the others on their journey. It made sense. If they traveled at the speed of the weakest person present, not only would they not know when they would reach Mistfall Island, but they wouldn't even know when they would leave Cloud Continent. Compared to Duan Ling Tian's brief astonishment, everyone else, except for Zhou Di and the other 2 direct disciples of the Martial Emperor, was astonished for half a day when they were first carried through the air. Brother Ling Tian, I imagine by the time you and I return next time, you will know your origin. On the way, Yang Hui said to Duan Ling Tian. Yang Hui felt a little guilty for not being able to help Duan Ling Tian find out his origin after so long. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Having been mentally prepared, he wasn't surprised. My memories are gradually recovering as time passes. Perhaps, as the turtle said, they will fully recover on their own after a little over a year. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself, Mistfall Island, overseas sacred island. It's truly exciting. Unbeknownst to him, Duan Ling Tian's thoughts drifted, and his eyes sparkled with anticipation for the place he was about to go. Also, the exquisite jade box my cheap old man left me. With my current strength, I should be able to open it, right? Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Immediately after, he raised his hand, and an exquisite jade box appeared in his hand. Just as Duan Ling Tian was trying to open the exquisite jade box, north of the inner land of Cloud Continent, in a world of ice and snow, figures rose into the sky. There were 11 in total, all women. Go. As the leading woman spoke faintly, a vast invisible force surged from her body, enveloping the 10 women behind her, pulling them swiftly northward. Kur, thanks to your ice god sword art. If it weren't for the ice god sword art, we wouldn't have been able to become Martial Emperor's direct disciples as soon as we arrived at Cold Valley, Yuhan Valley. Nor would we have had the opportunity to witness that unfamiliar world overseas. Among the 10 women, there was one with an exquisite face, a graceful figure, and an unconscious hint of charm and allure in her expression, who spoke to another woman beside her. This woman's beauty was no less than the former's, but her temperament was very different from the former's. Unlike the former's charm and allure, she was more like a girl next door, like a delicate young lady.